They threw her to the wolves, literally. Sarah hit the ground hard, her knees scraping against stone, her palms tearing on rough rock. The iron gate slammed shut behind her, and she heard the click of the lock. Final, absolute, condemning. "Good luck, little whore." Her stepmother's voice drifted through the bars, dripping with satisfaction. "They say the king's wolves haven't been fed in 3 days. I'm sure they'll appreciate the meal." Sarah didn't give her the satisfaction of a response. She pushed herself upright, ignoring the blood on her hands, and turned to face the pit. It was massive. A circular arena carved into the earth beneath the castle, ringed by high stone walls impossible to climb. Torches flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows across the dirt floor. And at the far end, barely visible in the darkness, she could see them. The wolves. There were at least a dozen of them. Huge beasts, larger than any natural wolf, their eyes gleaming in the torchlight, their bodies coiled with predator stillness. They watched her with an intelligence that made her skin crawl. "The king uses this pit to execute traitors," her stepsister had whispered gleefully when they dragged Sarah from her cell. "The wolves tear them apart. They say the screaming can be heard throughout the castle." Sarah swallowed hard. She wouldn't scream. She refused to scream. If she was going to die, she would do it with dignity. She'd survived 18 years of her stepmother's cruelty, survived being treated as a servant in her own home after her father's death, survived beatings and starvation and being locked in the cellar for days at a time. She would not break now. The wolves began to move. They spread out slowly, circling, their massive paws silent on the stone floor. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She could see their teeth now, white and gleaming, sharp as daggers. Could see the muscles rippling beneath their fur, built for power and speed. She had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. All she could do was stand there, fists clenched, and wait for the end. The largest wolf stepped forward. He was enormous, black as midnight, with silver threading through his fur and eyes that burned amber in the torchlight. He moved with a grace that seemed wrong for something so massive, each step deliberate, predatory. Sarah forced herself to hold still, forced herself to meet those amber eyes without flinching. "If I'm going to die, I'll die looking my death in the face." The wolf stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that one lunge would have his teeth at her throat. He tilted his head, studied her, and then he did something impossible. He lowered himself to the ground, slowly, gracefully, until his massive body was pressed flat against the stone. His great head bowed, his amber eyes closed. Submission. Sarah stared. Her mind couldn't process what she was seeing. The wolf, the terrifying, deadly beast that was supposed to tear her apart, was submitting to her. Movement in her peripheral vision. She turned, heart still racing, and watched as the other wolves approached. One by one, they lowered themselves to the ground. One by one, they pressed their bellies to the stone and bowed their heads. Within moments, she was surrounded by a circle of wolves, all of them prostrate, all of them still, all of them waiting. "What?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "What's happening?" "That," said a deep voice from above, "is exactly what I'd like to know." Sarah's head snapped up. A figure stood at the edge of the pit, looking down at her from a balcony carved into the stone wall. Even from this distance, she could see broad shoulders, dark hair, the glint of amber eyes that matched the wolves. The Lycan king. Open the gate. His voice carried across the pit, commanding and cold. Your Majesty! A guard's voice, trembling. The prisoner is scheduled for execution? I said open the gate. The iron bars groaned. Sarah turned to see a section of the wall sliding open, revealing a stone staircase leading upward. She hesitated, not understanding, not trusting. The black wolf at her feet lifted his head and nudged her calf gently. Go. She went. The stairs seemed endless. Her legs shook with every step, from fear, from exhaustion, from the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. When she finally emerged into the torchlit corridor above, she found herself face to face with the king. He was even more imposing up close, tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp features and dark hair that fell past his collar. He wore simple black clothing, no crown, no finery. But his presence filled the corridor like something physical, something that demanded attention. And his eyes, amber and gold, exactly like the wolves. They swept over her, the torn dress, the bloody hands, the bruises she knew were visible on her arms, and something flickered in their depths. Who put you in that pit? His voice was quiet, dangerous. My stepmother. Sarah's voice came out steadier than she expected. Lady Varen. She told the guards I was a thief, that I'd stolen from the crown. Did you? No. She held his gaze, refusing to look away. I've never stolen anything in my life. She wanted me dead, because I'm the rightful heir to my father's estate, and with me gone, everything goes to her. The king studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to the guard hovering nervously nearby. Find Lady Varen. Bring her to me. Now. Your Majesty. Now. The guard fled. The king turned back to Sarah. His expression had shifted, the cold authority replaced by something almost like curiosity. Do you know why the wolves didn't attack you? Sarah shook her head. I thought I was going to die. You should have. He stepped closer, and she caught his scent, pine and wood smoke and something wild underneath. Those wolves are trained to kill. They've torn apart dozens of prisoners. They don't show mercy. They don't hesitate. His amber eyes burned into hers. And yet they laid at your feet like you were their queen. I don't understand. Neither do I. He reached out, slowly, and touched her chin, tilted her face toward the light. The contact sent fire racing through her veins, unexpected, overwhelming. Her wolf, dormant for so long she'd forgotten it existed, suddenly stirred. Mate. Something whispered in the back of her mind. Mate, mate, mate. The king's eyes widened, just slightly, just enough for Sarah to know he'd felt it too. What's your name? His voice had changed, rougher now, more urgent. Sarah Varen. Well, Sarah Ashford. Varen is my stepmother's name. My father was Lord Ashford. Sarah. He said it slowly, like he was tasting the shape of it. Do you know what you are? I'm nobody. I'm nothing. Just a girl my stepmother wanted dead. You're not nothing. His thumb traced her jawline, achingly gentle. You're my mate. The wolves knew it before I did. That's why they submitted. They recognized their queen. Sarah's heart stopped, started again. That's impossible. I've been alive for 300 years. I've learned that very little is truly impossible. He dropped his hand, but his eyes never left her face. Your stepmother tried to execute you by throwing you to my wolves. Instead, she delivered you directly to me. I can't. You don't have to do anything. His voice softened. You don't have to accept this. You don't have to accept me. But I want you to know something, Sarah Ashford. What? You were told the wolves would bite, that they would tear you apart, that you would die screaming in that pit. He stepped back, giving her space, giving her room to breathe. Instead, they laid at your feet, because even the beasts know what your stepmother refuses to see. What's that? His amber eyes held hers, burning with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. That you're worth protecting, that you're worth fighting for, that you're worth more than anything she could ever comprehend. He looked at her like he meant every word, like she was something precious, like she was worth waiting for. Sarah didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do with the warmth spreading through her chest, replacing the cold terror that had lived there for so long. But for the first time in 18 years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The king's name was Ronan. He told her as they walked through the castle corridors, two of his wolves padding silently behind them. The black one, the one who had bowed first, stayed close to Sarah's side, his massive shoulder brushing against her hip with every step. He's called Shadow, Ronan said, noticing her glance. He's the alpha of the pack. The fact that he submitted to you first, that's significant. Significant how? Wolves follow hierarchy. Shadow leads because he's the strongest, the most dominant. For him to bow before anyone, even me, is rare. Ronan's amber eyes flickered to the massive wolf. He's never done it for a stranger, never done it for someone he just met. Sarah looked down at Shadow. The wolf gazed back at her with intelligent amber eyes, his tail swaying slowly. He didn't look like a killer. He looked like a guardian. Why did he do it for me? Because wolves see what humans often miss. Ronan stopped before a set of ornate doors. They sense things: truth, intent, worth. He pushed the doors open, and they sensed something in you that made them kneel. The room beyond took Sarah's breath away. It was enormous. A massive bed, draped in deep green and gold. A fireplace already crackling with warmth. Windows that looked out over moonlit gardens. More luxury than she'd seen in years. More than she'd seen since before her father died and her stepmother had relegated her to the servants' quarters. "These are your chambers," Ronan said. "For as long as you want them." "My chambers?" Sarah turned to stare at him. "An hour ago I was in your execution pit. Now you're giving me a palace?" "An hour ago, my wolves showed me something I'd been searching for my entire life." He leaned against the doorframe, keeping his distance. "I'm not going to throw that away. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. I know you faced death with your chin raised and your fists clenched. I know you looked my wolves in the eye instead of cowering. I know your stepmother wanted you dead badly enough to use my name to do it." His jaw tightened. "And I know that the bond between us is real, whether either of us is ready for it or not." Sarah's head was spinning. She walked into the room slowly, her fingers brushing the silk of the curtains, the soft wool of the rugs. Shadow followed her, settling himself before the fireplace like he belonged there. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted. "I was supposed to die tonight. I'd made peace with it. And now everything has changed." Ronan's voice softened. "I know it's overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me or anyone. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that this is real." "Prove it how?" "By taking care of you. By keeping you safe. By showing you what it feels like to be valued instead of discarded." He straightened from the doorframe. A healer is coming to tend your wounds. There are clothes in the wardrobe. Food will be brought shortly. He paused. And Sarah? Yes? My wolves will guard your door tonight. Not to keep you in, but to keep everyone else out. His amber eyes held hers, steady and sure. No one will ever throw you in a pit again. I swear it. He left before she could respond. Sarah stood alone in the beautiful room, surrounded by more comfort than she'd known in years. Shadow watched her from his place by the fire, his amber eyes gleaming in the flickering light. I don't understand you, she told the wolf. Any of you. Why didn't you attack me? Shadow's tail thumped against the floor. He rose, padded over to her, and pressed his massive head against her palm. The gesture was so gentle, so unexpected, that tears pricked at her eyes. I was ready to die, she whispered. I'd accepted it. And then you bowed, and I don't know what to do with that. The wolf made a soft sound in his throat. Not a growl, something closer to comfort. A knock at the door made her jump. Shadow's head swung toward the sound, but his posture remained relaxed. Enter, Sarah called, her voice steadier than she felt. The door opened to reveal an elderly woman carrying a basket of supplies. Behind her came servants bearing trays of food, pitchers of water, bundles of clothing. His Majesty sent us to tend to you, my lady. The healer set down her basket and gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Let me see those hands. Sarah sat. The healer's touch was gentle as she cleaned the scrapes on Sarah's palms, as she examined the bruises on her arms and the old scars that spoke of years of abuse. These aren't new, the healer said quietly, tracing a faded mark on Sarah's wrist. You've been hurt for a long time. My stepmother. The words came out flat, familiar. She believed in discipline. She believed in cruelty. The healer's expression hardened. I've seen marks like these before. They're not discipline. They're torture. Sarah didn't argue. There was nothing to argue about. His Majesty will want to know about this, the healer continued. He cares deeply about such things. Why would he care? He doesn't know me. The healer looked up, her old eyes surprisingly sharp. He cares because that's who he is. 300 years on the throne, and I've never known him to ignore suffering. She returned to her work. The wolves bowed to you, child. Do you understand what that means? Everyone keeps asking me that. I don't understand any of it. It means they recognize you as theirs, as his, as ours. The healer's voice softened. It means that whatever your stepmother intended, fate had other plans. The wolves saw your soul, Lady Ashford, and they found it worthy. Worthy. The word hit Sarah like a physical blow. She'd never been worthy of anything, not her father's attention, consumed as he'd been with grief after her mother's death, not her stepmother's love, which had never existed in the first place, not even basic kindness from the servants who'd watched her suffer and said nothing. I don't feel worthy, she admitted. I feel like this is a dream, like I'm going to wake up back in that pit, with the wolves circling, with death coming for me. It's not a dream. The healer finished wrapping Sarah's hands and sat back. The king is many things, proud, stubborn, fierce, but he's not cruel. If he says you're his mate, then you are. And if the wolves say you're their queen, then you are that too. I don't know how to be anyone's queen. I don't know how to be anything except a servant. Then you'll learn. The healer rose, gathering her supplies. You have time. You have safety. And you have something most people never receive. What's that? A second chance. The healer smiled. Don't waste it. She left, taking the servants with her. Sira was alone again. Alone except for Shadow, who had returned to his place by the fire and was watching her with those knowing amber eyes. She walked to the window and looked out at the moonlit gardens. Somewhere in this castle, her stepmother was being dragged before the king. Somewhere, the woman who had tried to kill her was facing consequences for the first time in her miserable life. And here was Sarah, alive when she should have been dead, safe when she should have been torn apart, standing in a queen's chambers, wearing bandages applied by a royal healer, with a wolf at her feet who had bowed instead of bitten. She didn't understand it, didn't trust it. But for the first time in 18 years, she wanted to. The nightmare came that same night. It was always the same. The cellar, the darkness, the cold stone floor where her stepmother had left her for 3 days without food or water when she was 12 years old. Her crime? Crying at her father's grave on the anniversary of his death. Weakness, Lady Varin had hissed, shoving her down the stairs. I won't tolerate weakness in my house. In the dream, Sarah was still 12, still small, still believing that if she was good enough, quiet enough, obedient enough, someone would love her. The cellar walls pressed in, and she could hear the rats moving in the darkness, and she was so cold, so hungry, so alone. She woke, with a scream, trapped in her throat. Shadow was at her bedside instantly, his massive head pressing against her shoulder, a low whine in his throat. The fire had burned low. Shadows pressed in from every corner, and for a moment she was back there, small and terrified, and knowing that no one was coming to help. A knock at the door. Urgent. Sira? Ronan's voice. She should send him away, should prove she could handle this alone. She'd been handling things alone for 18 years. Come in, she heard herself say. The door opened. Ronan stood in the threshold wearing loose sleep clothes, his dark hair dishevelled. In the dim light, with his guard down, he looked less like a king and more like a man, a worried man. I felt it, he said quietly. Through the bond. Your fear. I didn't make any sound. You didn't have to. He crossed to her bedside, but stopped at the edge of the mattress, leaving space between them. Shadow moved aside, settling at the foot of the bed, but staying close. The mate bond connects us. When you're in pain, I feel the echo. Sarah pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. The nightmare still clung to her like cobwebs. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. Don't apologize for having nightmares. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch her. Do you want to talk about it? There's nothing to talk about, just old memories. Memories of what? She was quiet for a long moment. She'd never told anyone, never admitted the full scope of what Lady Varin had done to her, how completely she'd been broken down and rebuilt as something small and obedient. But Ronan was looking at her with those steady amber eyes, and the words started spilling out. The cellar. She used to lock me in the cellar when I displeased her. For hours. Sometimes days. Sira's voice came out flat, distant. The first time I was 8. I'd asked about my mother, asked if she'd loved me. Lady Varin said only weak people needed love, and she would teach me to be strong. Ronan's hands curled into fists. How long? How long what? How long did she keep you there, that first time? 2 days. Sira shrugged, a gesture that felt like surrender. I learned quickly. Don't ask questions. Don't cry. Don't want things. Don't need things. Be invisible, and maybe she'll forget you exist. And did she? Forget you exist? No. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. I was useful. Someone had to scrub the floors and wash the linens and cook the meals. Someone had to be blamed when things went wrong. She needed me. She just didn't want me. She met his eyes. There's a difference. Ronan was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with barely contained fury. I'm going to kill her. What? Your stepmother. I'm going to tear her apart for what she did to you. She's not worth it. Sarah's voice was calm, tired. She's not worth your rage. She's not worth anything. You're worth everything. He moved closer, his hand hovering near her face. A question. May I? She nodded. His palm cupped her cheek, achingly gentle. You were a child, Sarah, an orphan. You should have been protected. Instead, she turned you into a servant and punished you for existing. His thumb traced her cheekbone. That wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault. I know. The words caught in her throat. I know it wasn't. But sometimes I still feel like that girl in the cellar, small and cold and waiting for someone to remember I exist. I remember. His voice cracked on the words. I see you, Sarah. Not the servant she made you, not the victim she created. You, the woman who faced my wolves without flinching, the woman who held her head high even when she thought she was going to die. Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back. The wolves saw it too, Ronan continued. They saw your strength, your courage, your worth. That's why they bowed. His hand slid from her cheek to tangle in her hair. They recognized something in you that your stepmother spent 18 years trying to destroy, and they honored it. I don't feel strong. I don't feel worthy. I know. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. That's what abuse does. It makes you forget what you are. It makes you believe the lies they told you. His breath was warm against her skin. But the lies were never true, Sarah. You were always worthy. You were always strong. You were always enough. A tear slipped down her cheek. She couldn't stop it. Ronan caught it with his thumb. You're crying. I don't cry. The protest came out weak. She trained me not to cry. Said tears were weakness. Tears aren't weakness. They're release. He pulled her forward, wrapping his arms around her. Let go, Sarah. You're safe now. You don't have to be strong for anyone but yourself. She broke. The sobs came from somewhere deep. 18 years of suppressed pain, suppressed fear, suppressed grief. She cried for the child locked in the cellar. Cried for the girl who'd learned to be invisible. Cried for all the years she'd spent believing she was worthless. Ronan held her through all of it, didn't speak, didn't demand anything, just held her, one hand stroking her hair, his heartbeat steady against her ear. Shadow pressed against her back, warm and solid and present. When the tears finally slowed, Sarah pulled back just enough to look at Ronan. His amber eyes were soft, warm, full of something she was afraid to name. I'm falling for you, she whispered, and it terrifies me, because everyone I've ever loved has either died or hurt me. I'm not going to hurt you. He pressed his forehead to hers. And I'm not going anywhere. I waited 300 years for my mate, Sarah. I would have waited 300 more. You don't even know me. I know you survived 18 years of hell and came out the other side with your kindness intact. I know you faced death without flinching. I know you cried in my arms and let me hold you, even though trust is the hardest thing you've ever done." His hands cradled her face. "That's enough to start. The rest we'll discover together." She tilted her face toward his. Their lips were inches apart. "I want to kiss you," she breathed. "I know." His voice was rough, strained. "I want that too, more than I've wanted anything in centuries." But he didn't close the distance. "When I kiss you, I want it to be because you're ready, not because you're grateful or scared or overwhelmed, because you want it." "I do want it." "Then you'll still want it tomorrow." He pressed a kiss to her forehead instead. Soft, reverent, full of promise. "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. We have time." She curled against his chest, shadow warm at her back, and let herself feel safe for the first time since she was 8 years old. She was falling for him, falling fast and hard and terrified. But for the first time, she had wolves at her feet and a king at her side. And she wasn't falling alone. The reckoning came 3 days later. Sarah was in the castle gardens with Shadow when the summons arrived. A servant, breathless and wide-eyed, telling her the king requested her presence in the throne room. Her stepmother had finally been found. Her blood ran cold. She'd known this moment was coming, had dreaded it, prepared for it, tried to convince herself she was ready for it. But as she walked through the castle corridors with Shadow pressed close to her side, she felt 8 years old again, small, terrified, waiting to be punished. The throne room doors loomed before her. She could hear voices inside, one cold and commanding, one shrill with indignation. Lady Varen. Sarah's hands trembled. Shadow pressed harder against her leg, a low rumble in his chest. "You can do this?" his presence seemed to say. "You're not alone." She pushed open the doors and stepped inside. The hall was packed. Nobles lined the walls, guards stood at attention, and at the center of the room, on her knees before the throne, knelt her stepmother. Lady Varen looked terrible. 3 days of confinement had stripped away her usual polish, leaving behind something desperate and wild-eyed. Her expensive dress was wrinkled, her hair was in disarray, and when her gaze landed on Sarah, her face twisted with pure, undiluted hatred. "You!" The word dripped with venom. "You ungrateful little wretch! What lies have you been telling?" Silence. Ronan's voice cut through the hall like a blade. He sat on his throne, but his eyes found Sarah's the moment she entered. Something in them softened, just for a moment, just for her, before the ice returned. "You will not speak to her." "She's mine." Lady Varen's voice rose to a screech. "I raised her, fed her, clothed her. Everything she has, she owes to me." "You threw her in my execution pit." Ronan's voice was deadly calm. "You told my guards she was a thief. You watched her walk to what you believed would be her death. And you called her a whore." The hall went silent. "I've spent 3 days investigating your claims," Ronan continued. "Do you know what I found?" Lady Varen's face went pale. "Your Majesty." "I found no evidence of theft. I found forged documents attempting to strip Sarah of her inheritance. I found servants who testified, under oath, to 18 years of abuse, beatings, starvation, being locked in a cellar for days at a time." His voice rose with each word. "I found a woman who tortured a child and tried to murder her when she grew old enough to claim what was rightfully hers." "She's lying." "The wolves don't lie." Ronan stood from his throne and descended the steps. When I put Sarah in that pit, they should have torn her apart. Instead, they bowed. They recognized her as their queen. He stopped before Lady Varin, looming over her kneeling form. "Do you know what that means?" Lady Varin said nothing. "It means fate chose her. It means she's my mate. It means you didn't just try to kill a servant. You tried to kill the future queen of the Lycans." Ronan's smile was sharp as a blade. "And now you're going to pay for it." "No." The word burst out of Sarah before she could stop it. Every head turned. "No. Wait." Ronan's eyes found hers, questioning. Sarah walked forward, past the guards, past the nobles, until she stood before her stepmother. Shadow followed, positioning himself at her side like a dark sentinel. For 18 years, this woman had loomed over her, had seemed impossibly powerful, impossibly cruel, impossibly large. But now, kneeling on the stone floor, Lady Varin looked small, pathetic, human. "You told me I was worthless," Sarah said. Her voice didn't waver. "Every day for 18 years. You told me I was nothing, a burden, a waste of space." Lady Varin's lip curled. "Because it's true. You're nothing but a—" "I'm not nothing." Sarah cut her off, and the strength in her own voice surprised her. "I was never nothing. I was a child who lost her parents and needed love. And instead of loving me, you broke me down and tried to remake me into something small, something you could control. You should be grateful I kept you at all. I should be dead." Sarah's voice rose. "That's what you wanted, isn't it? You threw me to the wolves. You wanted them to tear me apart so you could take everything my father left me." She stepped closer, and for the first time in 18 years, Lady Varin flinched. But they didn't bite. They bowed, because even the beasts could see what you refused to acknowledge. "And what's that?" Lady Varin's voice was venomous. "That you're the king's new whore?" Shadow's growl was deafening. He lunged forward, teeth bared, and Lady Varin screamed, "Shadow, stop!" The wolf froze mid-lunge, his teeth inches from Lady Varin's throat. He looked at Sarah, amber eyes questioning. "She's not worth it," Sarah said quietly. "She's not worth your fangs. She's not worth anything." Shadow held the position for a long, tense moment. Then he withdrew, returning to Sarah's side, his growl fading to a low rumble of displeasure. Sarah looked down at her stepmother, cowering, trembling, finally understanding that she had no power here. "You tried to destroy me," Sarah said, "and you failed. I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm not the scared little girl you locked in the cellar anymore." She turned her back on Lady Varin, a deliberate dismissal, and walked toward Ronan. "She can face whatever justice you see fit. I don't need to watch." Ronan's expression transformed. The cold authority melted into something warm, something proud. "You heard her?" he said to the guards without looking away from Sarah. "Take Lady Varin to the dungeons. She'll face trial for attempted murder of a royal." Guards moved. Lady Varin screamed curses and protests. But Sarah didn't turn around, didn't look back. She kept her eyes on Ronan, on his amber gaze that looked at her like she was everything. "You didn't let Shadow kill her," he said quietly when they were alone. The nobles had been dismissed. The hall was empty except for them and the wolves who had slipped in through side doors, surrounding them in a protective circle. "She's not worth his teeth." Sarah's voice was steady. "She's not worth anything." She spent 18 years telling me I was worthless, and now I realize she was the worthless one, not me. Ronan closed the distance between them. His hands cupped her face, tilting it toward his. "You're extraordinary," he murmured. "You know that, don't you? You had every right to demand her blood, and instead you denied her even that satisfaction." "I didn't do it for her. I did it for me." Sarah reached up and touched his face, feeling the sharp line of his jaw beneath her palm. "I don't want to be defined by her anymore. I don't want to carry her cruelty with me. I want to be free." "You are free." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're the freest person I know. Because of you." She stepped closer into his warmth. "Because you pulled me out of that pit. Because your wolves bowed instead of bit. Because you looked at me and saw something worth saving." "I saw you." His voice was rough. "That was always enough." "Then let me choose you." She rose on her toes, bringing her lips close to his. "Not because I'm grateful. Not because you saved me. Because I want to. Because when I'm with you, I finally feel like myself." "Sarah, I love you." The words came out fierce, certain. "I love you, Ronan, and I'm done being afraid of it." He kissed her, not gentle, not careful. He kissed her like he'd been waiting 300 years for this exact moment and couldn't bear another second of separation. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressed against hers. Around them, the wolves raised their heads and howled, a sound of joy, of celebration, of pack recognizing pack. Sarah kissed him back with everything she had. Every year of pain, every moment of fear, every night locked in the cellar. She poured it all into the kiss and felt it transform, felt the pain become something bright, something fierce, something that felt like home. "Mine," Ronan growled against her lips. "Yours," she agreed. "And you're mine." The wolves howled again, and Shadow pressed against their legs, and Sarah laughed into Ronan's mouth because she was alive and loved, and finally free. The mating ceremony was held in the pit. It was Sarah's choice, and everyone, including Ronan, had tried to talk her out of it. The pit was for executions, they said, for death, for endings, not beginnings. But Sarah knew what she wanted. "This is where the wolves first bowed to me," she told Ronan the night before, curled against him in front of the fire with Shadow sprawled across their feet. "This is where I was supposed to die. This is where I found you instead." She looked up at him, and her smile was fierce. "I want to reclaim it. I want to turn it into something beautiful." So the pit was transformed. Torches were replaced with candles, thousands of them, flickering like stars in the underground darkness. Flowers cascaded from the stone walls. And at the center of the arena, where Sarah had once stood waiting for death, a dais had been erected for the ceremony. She walked down the stone stairs in a gown of deep green silk, her hair threaded with silver. The wolves parted before her, bowing as she passed, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because she was theirs, and they were hers, and that bond would never break. Ronan waited at the center, dressed in black, his amber eyes burning in the candlelight. Shadow stood at his side like a dark sentinel, and when Sarah reached them, the great wolf pressed his head against her palm in greeting. "You're beautiful," Ronan breathed. "You're biased." "Absolutely." He took her hands, and his touch sent warmth racing through her. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready since the moment your wolves laid at my feet." She squeezed his fingers. "I just didn't know it yet." The ceremony was ancient, Vows spoken in the old tongue, words that had bound Lycan mates for millennia. But when it came time for the promises they'd chosen themselves, Sarah felt her heart swell. "I will protect you," Ronan vowed, his voice carrying through the silent pit. "Not because you need protection. You've proven you can survive anything. But because you deserve someone who stands beside you. I will honor you. I will cherish you. I will spend every day of my life making sure you never feel worthless again." Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes. She blinked them back, and then let them fall, because tears weren't weakness, and she was done pretending otherwise. "I will choose you," she answered. "Every day. Not because fate demanded it, but because my heart did. You saw me when I was nothing but a girl in a pit, waiting to die. You pulled me out. You showed me what I could be." She squeezed his hands. "I will love you, Ronan, fiercely, completely, for as long as the stars burn." The marking came next. Ronan's teeth at her throat, leaving the bite that would bind them for eternity. It didn't hurt. It felt like completion, like the final piece of a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving. When he pulled back, his eyes were glowing with more than just power. With love. Pure and overwhelming and absolutely certain. "My queen," he murmured. "My mate. My heart." "My king," she answered. "My wolf. My home." Around them, the wolves raised their heads and howled, a chorus of joy that echoed off the stone walls and transformed the execution pit into something sacred, something beautiful, something that belonged to them. Ronan kissed her as the howls faded, and Sarah smiled against his lips because she had done it. She had reclaimed this place. She had turned death into life, endings into beginnings, fear into love. That night, he worshipped her. There was no other word for it. He touched her like she was precious, kissed her like she was sacred, held her like he couldn't believe she was real. And when they finally came together, Sarah understood what it meant to be truly seen, to be wanted not for what she could provide, but simply for who she was. "I love you," Ronan breathed against her skin, the words falling like prayers. "I love you. I love you. I love you too." She pulled him closer, her hands tracing the planes of his back. "I never thought I'd have this. Never thought anyone would want me like this. I've wanted you for 300 years. I just didn't know your face until you walked into my pit." He pressed his forehead to hers. "And now that I have you, I'm never letting go." "Good." She smiled against his lips. "Because I'm not going anywhere." 6 months later, the news arrived about Lady Varen. Sarah was in her study. She had a study now, filled with books and comfortable chairs and wolves who slept in patches of sunlight, when Ronan found her with a scroll in his hand. "The trial concluded," he said, settling into the chair beside hers. Shadow lifted his head from Sarah's feet, then settled back down when he determined there was no threat. "She's been sentenced." Sarah took the scroll but didn't open it. What did they decide? Life imprisonment, stripped of her title, her lands, her wealth. Ronan's jaw tightened. "Your father's estate has been restored to you. All of it. The court ruled that the forged documents were void and that you are the rightful heir." Sarah stared at him. "I don't want it." "I know." His hand found hers. "That's why I had the estate converted into a sanctuary, for children like you were, orphans, abused, forgotten. They'll have a home now, safety, people who actually care about them." Tears burned behind her eyes. "You did that? You inspired it." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. You survived 18 years of hell and came out with your kindness intact. I wanted to honor that, to make sure no child ever has to endure what you endured. Sarah set down the scroll and climbed into his lap, wrapping her arms around him. Shadow made a grumbling sound of protest at being disturbed, then resettled against their legs. Thank you, she whispered against Ronan's neck, for all of it, for saving me, for loving me, for turning my pain into something that helps others. You saved yourself. His arms tightened around her. I just gave you the chance to do it. She pulled back to look at him, this king who had pulled her from a pit, this man who had shown her what she was worth, this mate who had waited 300 years and would have waited 300 more. I was told the wolves would bite, she said softly. Do you remember? That's what my stepmother said when she threw me in, that they would tear me apart. I remember. His amber eyes held hers, warm and steady. And instead? Instead, they laid at my feet. Sarah smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes, the kind she'd learned to give freely in the past 6 months. Because they saw something she never could. Something you saw the moment I walked into that pit. What's that? That I was worth protecting. She kissed him softly. That I was worth fighting for. Another kiss. That I was worth loving. You were. His voice was fierce. You are. You always will be. She smiled against his lips. I know. You showed me. They sat together as the sun set outside her study window, wrapped in each other's arms. Wolves sprawled around them like living blankets. The girl who'd been thrown to the wolves. The king who'd claimed her as his own. 2 souls who had found each other in the most impossible of circumstances. She'd walked into that pit expecting death. Instead, she'd found a pack, a king, a home, and wolves who had bowed instead of bitten, because even the beasts had known what she was worth. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. More Lycan King romances are coming soon. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next.